From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. Talking to you, let's see, you and I haven't spoken since, 3.5 weeks ago. And I kind of hoped that while I was away, a few things would be taken care of. But instead, I come back and I find out that nothing has changed. Nothing has happened. What's the deal? The recount in Arizona, correct me if I'm wrong, is it still going on after all this time? Voting rights is still stalled. Infrastructure continues to be whittled away. The infrastructure bill. I open up my feed after trying to stay away for a few weeks. I really tried to clear my head. Did anything happen while I was away? Oh my God, you guys. I can't leave and count on things being taken care of. That was my fondest wish. Oh, by the time I get back, these things will be old news. Hey, no. What are we going to do? So I had quite an adventure. I helped my sister Mary move to Nevada from Iowa. So as you know, I'm here in Wisconsin, in River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world, in Milwaukee. So now, many weeks ago, I picked up a Penske rental truck here in South Milwaukee, drove it over to Iowa, spent the day watching guys load it up. I didn't have to do any loading. I just did the driving. Mary hired a couple of guys to do the loading. It took them most of the day, or half the day. Then I took off for Gardnerville, Nevada. Spent a few nights on the road. Pretty uneventful trip, except for one little adventure. I'm in, Wyoming on, I guess that would be night 3 of my trip. Heading into Utah. I'm in Utah by now. I lose track. Yeah, I think I'm in Utah. Anyway, I see this crummy little gas station out in the middle of nowhere. And I look at my gauge and I have half a tank. And I thought, I probably should stop, but this place looks really shady. It looks like the kind of place where they'd shoot a horror movie. So I look at my gauge. Okay, half a tank. Glance up, I see the next town is 20 miles away. All right, no problem. I'll easily make that. Not a problem at all. Well, okay, so now I'm driving through the Bonneville Salt Flats. I get to this little town of Knoll, Utah, and the sign says no services. Now, this is not my first rodeo. I've done several cross-country trips. If a sign says that a town is 20 miles away, it will always give you that little courtesy of saying no services, if there are indeed no services. But this sign didn't say that, the one I saw back 20 miles ago. So I did not have that information. And when I get there, now they tell me no services, and I pass the exit, and now there's no turning around. I'm in a big old 16-foot Penske truck in the middle of the Bonneville Salt Flats, and there's no turning around, and the next exit is 40 miles away. And I look at my gauge and I think, I'm just going to have to cross my fingers. And I'm having this very sinking feeling that I'm not going to make it. But I go 10, I go 20, I go 30, and I'm feeling like, I think I'm going to make it. And then putt, 10 miles short of my destination of Wendover, just on that Nevada border. I have to pull over 10 miles short, and I have to call up the road service, the emergency road service. Comes with Penske. All right, good job. It only took them a half hour to get there with some gas, so I made it. But it did give me the opportunity to actually walk on the salt flats, which I'd always been curious about. I've driven through there a few times. And I always wondered, what does it feel like out there? What does it feel like under your feet? Is it, is it soft? Is it hard? Is it, what is it? So I found out. And to no great surprise, really, it's salt. It's packed salt. It was kind of like walking on the moon. It's not quite packed down completely, hard. It does, you do leave a footprint. You leave a little bit of a footprint. It's packed pretty hard, but you leave a little bit of a footprint. And damned if it isn't salt. And after a couple minutes, you taste it on your lips. It's just, it was kind of cool. So I took a nice long walk on the Bonneville Salt Flats. That was my big adventure. So I arrive in a little town called Gardnerville, Nevada. Some friends of my sister's actually picked me up and helped me out, get to my destination. And then my sister met me the next day, and we got her moved in. One thought I had, I've preached this myself, that to get rid of your own bigotry, your own bias, all you have to do is travel. If you travel to other places, you will see other people and how they live, and you can't be prejudiced against them. And this particular trip, it worked kind of the opposite way. It was so strange for me driving through red states, seeing and having small conversations with people from red states. It had the opposite effect. I don't understand these people. I don't know how they live the way they live, how they vote the way they vote. It makes no sense to me. I felt like I was in this weird either foreign land or time warp land. I don't know where I was, but I did not feel at all comfortable or welcomed or at ease with these folks. I just felt like we have a problem. We have a problem. I just don't get it. I don't get these people. I wish I had better insight. I wish I had some sort of discovery, some sort of revelation, but all I felt was contempt. I gotta keep working on this. I don't know. So we got Mary moved in, and then I jumped on an Amtrak from Reno down to the Bay Area, saw an old friend in Santa Cruz, saw my kids. That was the big deal. They both live in the Bay Area. We met down in Santa Cruz. I got a rental there for a few days, and we hung out for a while, and that was fantastic. Went down to the ocean, said hello to the ocean. Oh, I love my ocean. I love that Pacific Ocean. I spent lots of time there, as you know. Spent many years in San Francisco, and many very happy hours down at Ocean Beach. So, went down to, what's it called? Seabright, I think. Seabright Beach, is that right? In Santa Cruz. That was fantastic. Got to commune with the ocean for a while and have some good quality time with my kids. And then, to finish off my story, here's a case where procrastination pays off. I did not make my arrangements to go home, whether I was going to fly or whether I was going to take Amtrak and actually what day I was going to leave. I just kept procrastinating. Thought, well, I don't know what might happen here. Maybe I'll have time to check in with my buddy Frank in San Francisco, which didn't happen this time, I'm sorry to say. Couldn't make that quite happen. But in my procrastination, I caught a lucky break. A friend of a friend, well, I shouldn't put it that way, a friend of my sister's, she has some close friends out there, needed a car driven from Gardnerville to Chicago. This friend has a daughter in the Navy, stationed at Great Lakes Naval Station in North Chicago. So they said, would you like to drive her car, a Toyota Highlander? Well, I thought about it for about 45 minutes, like, is this something I want to do? And then, okay. So I had my trip paid for. I got a free trip home. I got to spend 3 or 4 more days just driving on the road all by myself, which I kind of love. This is something else I discovered on this trip. I'm way more of a hermit than I even I was admitting. I, I really enjoyed having several days just alone on the road, and then at night you just veg out, watch some cable TV, watch some old sitcom reruns for a little while, and then get up and do the same thing. I was just a loner out on the road for several days, and that worked just fine for me. So I drop off the car, Amtrak it up to Milwaukee from Chicago, and boom, sleep in my own bed 3 weeks later. It was quite a trip. And I missed you guys, but damn it, why didn't you take care of things while I was gone? Things are crazy. The latest count I have, I'm changing the subject now. I'm going back to news reluctantly. Maybe I'll change the format of this program to sewing tips or something. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure I can do this. All right, let's dive in and see if we can. At my last count, at least this is according to Bernie Sanders, my man in the Senate, Bernie, 389 bills across 48 states, all to suppress the vote. Some have passed, some haven't. Lord Jesus, Mother Mary, and Joseph. As Bernie writes, I do not exaggerate when I say that the future of American democracy is at stake. We must pass the For the People Act. Yes, we absolutely must. That, of course, protecting voting rights, which Joe Manchin says he favors, but he won't vote for because it doesn't have any Republican votes. And just on principle, he refuses to vote for any bill that doesn't have at least some Republican support. He's an idiot. He's an ideologue. He's a power-hungry fool. I don't know what to say about Joe Manchin. I don't know what to say about the Republicans. These are problems that I left 3.5 weeks ago, and here they sit. Oh, what can we say here? Well, the latest on the Republicans is, well, I'm not sure if did this happen before I left? I think it did. Mitch McConnell uttered something almost as infamous as our goal is to make Obama a one-term president. Remember that? That's our number one goal. Well, then now the updated version of that is our number one goal is to oppose 100% of the Biden agenda. It doesn't matter. They come right out and say it out loud. I don't know why we have to keep doing this kind of analysis on what the Republicans are capable of or what they want. They come right out and they tell us. The Republicans, there's no space between the Kasichs and the Cheneys and the Kinzingers and then the crazy, the Josh Hawleys and the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the rest of them. There's really very little space. They'd like you to think there is. I just saw John Kasich again this weekend on Bill Maher. Oh, God, Bill Maher. Please have a feud with me, Bill Maher. Please tell me I'm wrong and call me names, because I really want to duke it out with you. But that's another story for the moment. Kasich still, his naivete is just almost inexplicable. He can call himself a Republican. And Kinzinger does this, and a handful of others. Romney does it, Cheney does it, and maybe that's about it. They claim to be Republicans, and they claim the high ground, and they disassociate themselves with the Orange Menace and his loyal henchmen. They disassociate themselves from the big lie that the election was stolen. They disassociate themselves from January 6th. But honestly, that's just played. You have nothing to say anymore. The Republicans are Republicans, and they have been for 40 plus years. In fact, you can go back to, go back to the founding of the nation, go back to the Civil War at least. And that faction is that faction. mainly Southern, mainly Christian, mainly racist, mainly hard conservative, right wing. That faction has always been there, and they are it. And I don't know how you look at America with a straight face and think you can say you're anything else. The right wing, conservative, whatever you want to call them, they've always been status quo. And in this country, status quo equals racism. And there's no escaping it. I think the only real difference between these two factions, if there is any difference, is the Orange Menace faction completely understands now that they are a minority party. They can never win an election again without cheating and lying. And they are 100% bought into that strategy. I think that Romney, Cheney, Kinzinger, Kasich et al., probably their most defining quality is naivete. They actually think that they can win elections based on ideas. They say so, and I think they actually believe it. So, in many ways, they are dumber than the deplorables if they still believe that. And my main point is, when you really get down to the issues about low taxes for billionaires, about trickle-down economics, about not really caring at all about racism, about climate crisis, either denying it entirely or literally just not caring and tossing out little bromides to issues like that. Really, the Republicans, you can't, there's no division on the issues. They're completely with each other, and they have been since the Civil War. I think if you want to look at this historically, FDR transformed the nation for a couple of election cycles. So the two Republican presidents who were most impacted by FDR were Dwight Eisenhower, certainly, who today would be a moderate Democrat or maybe even a slightly left Democrat based on his politics, and Richard Nixon, who passed the Clean Air Act. He proposed a negative income tax, which is basically a universal basic income. He was liberal compared to today's crowd. So, yeah, FDR and the New Deal absolutely had a huge impact. It's kind of like, I would liken it to Reagan. Reagan had such an impact on the psyche of America that the next few Democratic presidents had no choice but to sort of live in his shadow, namely, of course, Bill Clinton and then Barack Obama. So that's kind of the way I see it. Republicans, right-wing conservatives, whatever you want to call them, and let's not get confused by the Republican Party as founded by Abraham Lincoln. We won't get into all of that and have this switch of identity and Southern strategy and all of that. Okay, I'm just speaking in general terms. The conservative right-wing movement hasn't really changed, and that contingency has been there since the Civil War with very little evolution. And they're just, they're going strong. That's all there is to it. And the John Kasichs of the world and the Liz Cheneys of the world can give it all the lip service they want, but they're all Republicans. They're all conservatives. They're all reactionaries. They're all either open white supremacists or apologists, enablers of white supremacy. They're all climate deniers openly, or the do-nothing, know-nothing party when it comes to climate crisis. As for the economy, they're all trickle-downers. They all buy into that lie, talk about the big lie. If they want to deny the big lie about the election being stolen, they certainly are very comfortable with the other big lies. So, as we've said before, and it bears repeating, this is an illegitimate party. It's an illegitimate party that, without gerrymandering and without the benefits of the Electoral College, they would never win an election again. And even with that, they wouldn't win an election without outright cheating, which they're not quite comfortable with. All right, we're going to go back and forth a little bit here. I got to talk a little bit about Joe Manchin. Okay. Nancy, Chuck, go ahead. Pass your agenda. without compromise, put it out there knowing you're going to get no Republican votes, and knowing what Joe Manchin and in some cases Kyrsten Sinema, they both have announced that they won't support ending the filibuster. I'm not sure about Sinema, but Manchin has been openly critical of the process of reconciliation, all because of what we said earlier. He believes I don't know. In his heart, I think he's a true believer. I can't figure this guy out, that there has to be bipartisanship. And you know what? I agree. The world would be a much better place. The country would work better if we had bipartisanship, but we don't. Because as I've tried to make clear, the Republican Party is not a legitimate party. It hasn't been for quite some time. So, Nancy, Chuck, what you have to do is you just have to go ahead, introduce the bills, put them up for a vote, and you got to call Joe Manchin's bluff. You got to stop negotiating with the Republicans entirely. I can't believe I even have to say this, Joe. I thought you had learned this lesson a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago. You were giving indications that you'd learned the lesson especially from Barack Obama and his experience with the Affordable Care Act. Negotiated and negotiated with Republicans, watered the damn bill down to it was unrecognizable from its earlier iterations, and then got 0 votes. And now I can't believe you're doing the same thing with infrastructure. You start at $3 trillion, goes down to $1.7 trillion. Now you're talking about $1 trillion. You're still having meetings with Capito or whatever her name is, the senator, who is kind of the point person for negotiating for Republicans. And you're wrestling with Joe Manchin. And this infrastructure bill is just whittled down from its original $3 trillion down to under $1 trillion. And you continue to make concessions. You're making concessions about taxing the rich, which was that corporate tax was one of the most important components of this bill, just to get things right, to reverse a little bit of the Trump accomplishment. The only accomplishment he can point to is that big old tax cut. Corporate rate going from 35 to, 35 to 21? Joe wanted to raise it to 28. Now he's even given up on that. Anyway, point is, Joe, the rest of you Democrats, stop negotiating. Put exactly what you want in the bill and only what you want. Don't give any thought to this illegitimate party. That's all they are. They've already announced that they are going to oppose you 100%. Why in the world would you negotiate with them? For the sake of Joe Manchin? Okay, now here's what you want to do. Here's what you have to do. Forget about Joe Manchin. Forget about Kyrsten Sinema. Forget about the Republicans. Put exactly what you want into the bill. Put it on the floor of the House for a vote. It will pass. Send it exactly as is to the Senate and put it up for a vote, Chuck Schumer. And what you're going to do there is you're going to make Joe Manchin eat it. You're going to call Joe Manchin's bluff. Now, there are 2 possible outcomes here. One, he caves, and I actually think that's a possibility. When given that pressure, and you don't do it silently. You have every Democratic senator on the floor of the Senate stand up and talk directly to him. Have a Joe Manchin day on the floor of the Senate and have every single senator in the Democratic caucus aim their ire at Joe Manchin and tell him what for. And then you take a vote. And then he either caves or he stands. Those are the 2 possible outcomes. I know, Captain Obvious here. If he caves, boom, you win. You got a 50-50. And for the moment, I'm leaving Kyrsten Sinema out of this. I think this is all about Joe. Kyrsten Sinema is just a nut job. And I think she'll do whatever Joe does. So, okay. If Joe Manchin caves and he votes with you got your 50-50 tie. Kamala Harris comes in, breaks the tie, boom. And that's going to go for anything we need to pass. And right now, it's those 2 Voting Rights Acts and it's the Infrastructure Act. So just do it. I think he caves. I think in the end he votes with you. Now, if he doesn't, then he doesn't. and we go to the 22 midterms with Joe Manchin as maybe your top campaign story. Joe Manchin and the Republicans. You can look the American voters right in the eye, and you can say, this is what we passed. Put out the bullet points of the bill that you passed in the House and would have passed in the Senate if not for those 1 or 2 votes that you did not get from Joe and maybe Kirsten. And, of course, all the Republicans. And that's what you run on. And you say the Republicans and Joe Manchin stopped us. And you don't give a good goddamn about Joe Manchin and his reelection. You don't care. You put all your eggs into other baskets. There are Senate seats that can flip from Republican to Democratic. I know in, in Wisconsin for sure. In Pennsylvania, I don't have the list of states in front of me, but there are half a dozen states where you have a shot of flipping Republican to Democrat in the Senate. And you put all your eggs in that basket. You make great policy, and if it passes, it's a win-win. As we always say around here, good policy is good politics. So if Joe Manchin caves and it passes, great policy, great politics, run on that in 22. If it fails because of Joe Manchin and the Republicans, then run on that. Make sure it's very clear to the voters what you favor, what exactly was in that bill, what exactly the voters were deprived of because of Joe Manchin and the Republicans, and you run on that. Either way, it's the right thing to do. It's the political thing to do. So I'm asking you, I'm begging you, please, for the love of God, stop negotiations with the Republicans now. Look them in the face. Tell them they are not a legitimate party. Tell the American voters what you believe. They are not a legitimate party. We are governing alone. If to the extent there will be any negotiations, there will be negotiations between conservative, moderate, centrist, and progressive Democrats. All the negotiation, all the compromise would be within our caucus. The other caucus is illegitimate. We do not recognize them. Game over. You have to win another election to be recognized as partners in governing. Okay, can we do that? It's what we have to do. You have to use reconciliation. You have to end the filibuster. If Manchin balks, call his bluff, and then run on that. And if nothing gets done legislatively in the next year and a half, well, then so be it. It's better than passing watered down mush that will get 0 Republican votes anyway. You water it down, you mush it up, and even if by some miracle you pass it, now it's a piece of junk legislation that does little or nothing for anybody. And then you want to try and run on that? No, much better to run on quality legislation, even if it fails, than to run on lousy, watered-down, compromise legislation that passes. All right, well, glad to be back with you. The current state of things, I wish they were better, and I wish they had gotten better while we were apart. I was really kind of hoping to have good, happy news to talk about. All right, let's stay happy. Let's have a happy summer. Let's get our toes in the grass and have a wonderful summer together. All right, I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.